My grandmother used to say that some stories cling to villages the way fog clings to fields quiet, stubborn and impossible to shrug off. Woolpit was one of those places, even when I was a child visiting her cottage. Nestled on the edge of the old fields, where the land dips into those ancient wolf pits, she would pause before speaking about what happened there, as if the story itself were listening, as if saying it too loudly might stir up something that had never fully gone away. I remember one evening in particular. The sky was bruised purple, and the wind pressed the old wooden shutters with gentle taps that sounded like fingers. We sat by the fireplace, the flames stretching tall, burning orange and blue. She leaned closer to me, her voice dropping into the low, careful tone she used only for the stories she believed were real. "Not all children come from where we think," she whispered. "And not all who are lost are meant to be found." I didn't understand then. I barely understood years later when she passed and left me her journal, an old leather book with brittle pages and handwriting that trembled in places. But I understand now, and I know why she told me this story the way she did. Slowly, deliberately, never allowing the mystery to settle too neatly. This is how she told it. And now I will tell it to you. Many centuries ago, long before Woolpit grew into the quiet village. You see, Taditha land was wild. Dense forests pressed against the farmlands. The air smelled of iron from the tools of harvest, and the earth itself was darker and richer. People lived in close quarters with the unknown back then. Mysteries weren't things you clicked open on screens. They lived beside you, in the woods, in the sky, in the fields stretching behind your home. The wolf pits stood at the village's edge, deep. Narrow traps once used to capture wolves that roamed the land. By the time this story takes place, they were no longer in use, but they remained as silent scars in the earth. Most villagers avoided them. They said the pits had a strange way of echoing when the wind blew, as though calling out in voices just below hearing. It was a harvest season when it happened. The fields were alive with workers, scythes sweeping through tall stalks of wheat. The sun overhead dimmed slightly under a veil of cloud. The day was wonderfully ordinary. Nothing in the air suggested that the world was about to shift ever so slightly, opening a crack wide enough for something impossible to slip through. One was a girl odor, though still very much a child. The other was her younger brother, barely old enough to speak full sentences. Their skin was green, not bruised, not sickly, not tinted by shadows or dirt, green like young leaves after rainfall, like the underside of ferns in the forest. Their hair was tangled and dark, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. Their clothes were made of fabric no villager recognized, woven in patterns no one had ever seen. And they were crying. The first person to spot them was a farmhand. His name is lost in time, but the story says he dropped his tools and stared, unable to shout for help. Others soon gathered, whispering, praying, insisting that children must be spirits, omens, or something far worse. But they were shivering, frightened, exhausted. Hungran, their fear softened the hearts of even the most superstitious villagers. My grandmother said that no one could forget the way the girl clung to her brother, pressing his face into her shoulder as though trying to protect him from a world suddenly too bright and loud. When the villagers brought them into Woolpit, the children spoke, but not in any language the villagers recognized. Their words chimed, rising and falling in musical tones, like fragments of wind bells caught in the throat. The girl tried her best to communicate, but everything she said felt like a piece of something much larger, fractured beyond recognition. The village reeve, Sir Richard de Callan, took them into his home, determined to feed and care for them. But food, strangely, proved to be a challenge. The children refused everything. Bread, meat, fruit, even water terrified them, as if they feared it held some unseen danger. They cried for days. It was the girl who first found something. She recognized draw beans, still in their stalks, freshly harvested from the fields. She and her brother devoured them, desperate and trembling, eating them as though they were the only familiar thing left in a world that had abandoned them. Only after days of eating raw beans did they finally accept cooked meals, slowly adapting to the village diet. Strange things happened during those early weeks. The younger boy grew weaker every day. Some nights, the servants swore they heard whispers from his room, echoes that didn't match the children's voices. Soft, synchronized tones, like a distant humming, rising and falling as though trying to call him back to some place he was slipping away from. No villager ever found the source. Despite every effort, the boy grew pale, not green, but pale like fading parchment. He died in the early hours of a fog-heavy morning. The girl held his small hand until the warmth left it. Then she screamed, the kind of scream that doesn't fade with memory, the kind of scream that splits open something inside you. The villagers buried him on the far edge of the churchyard. They say the girl stood at the grave long after everyone had gone home, her shoulders shaking silently, her green skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. But she lived, and over time her color began to change. Slowly, subtly, the green hue faded, replaced by a soft, warm tone like any other child of Woolpit. She learned English with remarkable speed. Her voice stayed musical, her sentences flowing with unusual rhythm. But she adapted. She grew stronger. She played with the other children. She even laughed again, though not often. It was only after many months that she began answering questions, carefully, thoughtfully, as if she had to translate her memories, not just between languages, but between worlds. She said she came from a place where the sun never shone brightly, where a twilight hung overhead like a permanent early evening, a land with faint light, where nothing was bathed in full darkness or full day. She said everything there was green, the land, the trees, the rivers that glowed faintly like moss beneath the surface. Even the people. The villagers asked her what the name of her homeland was. She said a word that no one could replicate, neither then nor now. Even the records note that the name did not fit comfortably in the human mouth. When they asked how she and her brother arrived in Woolpit, the girl frowned, as though remembering something painful. She said they were tending their father's livestock when a sound filled the air, a strange, ringing vibration like metal being struck underwater. The animals panicked. The forest around them began to shimmer. A door anu, a tunnel opened in the air, tall and glowing faintly green. They were pulled inside. She remembered traveling through darkness, stumbling blindly, feeling her brother's hand gripping hers with desperate fear. They walked through the tunnel for what felt like an eternity. Then they saw a bright opening ahead. When they stepped out, they were near the wolf pits, blinded by sunlight they had never felt before. She believed they came from the land of Saint Martin, a name that puzzled everyone, a place where Saint Martin was revered, but not in the way humans worshipped him. There were theories. So many theories. Some villages believed that children had wandered from a hidden forest settlement, lost and malnourished, their skin green from chlorosis. Others whispered they came from the realm of fair folk never meant to be seen by humans at all. A few insisted they had crossed over from another dimension, slipping between worlds through a tear caused by something beyond human understanding. My grandmother, though, she believed something else, something she wrote in her journal in ink pressed so hard it nearly tore the pages. They were not lost. They were moved. She didn't explain why. Years later, I understood her meaning, because strange things followed the girl as she grew older. Small things at first, lights flickering when she passed, shadows moving unnaturally at the corners of rooms, whispers echoing faintly in narrow hallways. The villagers blamed drafts, candles, imagination, anything but her. But some things couldn't be explained, like the nights Richard found her standing in the fields alone, staring at a faint shimmer in the air, a vertical ripple that pulsed softly, like a heartbeat. When he called out to her, the shimmer vanished. She never spoke of it again, or the time she awoke screaming because she saw her brother standing at the foot of her bed, his skin green again, his eyes wide with both longing and warning. When she reached for him, he dissolved into darkness. Despite everything, she grew into adulthood. She worked. She loved. She married. She had a child of her own. Her life became ordinary on the surface, but those who knew her said she always looked over her shoulder when walking alone at dusk, as though expecting something to step out of the fading light. My grandmother said the girl never lost that alertness, that quiet fear. Even in her final years, when her hair had turned gray and her smile had softened, she moved with the silent caution of someone carrying a memory too heavy for the world to understand. Before she died, she told her daughter something she had never shared with anyone else. "The doorway never closed," she whispered. "It only waits." That sentence, written in shaking ink, was the final entry in my grandmother's journal. I don't know if the story is true. I don't know if the children came from another world or another dimension, or if they simply wandered through a place where reality thins, where shadows hold doors that humans were not meant to open. But I do know this: Woolpit still feels strange when you walk its fields at dusk. The air gets heavier, sound bends, and sometimes, if you're quiet enough, you feel a pulse beneath the earth. Like something old, something patient. My grandmother always warned me not to go near the wolf pits after sundown. She said the veil was thinner there, that sometimes the wind carries whispers in a language no one can speak, and if you're unlucky, you might hear a young boy crying for his sister, calling her from a place you cannot see. I've been to Woolpit myself, stood by the edge of the pits, listened, waited. I don't know what I expected, but sometimes, just sometimes, I think I hear something faint. A soft, chiming hum, a vibration in the air that feels familiar, ancient, wrong. And when it comes, I step back, slowly, respectfully, because I know what my grandmother meant when she wrote those final words. The doorway never closed. It only waits.